Jaap is bij default had zijn camera aan. Dat is superleuk. Klaar. Good afternoon and welcome everybody to this number 8 session of our 12 session webinar series around Teams as a platform, as we call it, doing things with Teams you have never done before. And today we have a great session about applications you can use within Teams during your meetings, so it will be cool to see what we can do. And my name is Jeroen Jansen. I'm a product marketing manager around customer success here in the Netherlands. And I'm not doing this alone today. I have support from Ruud. Ruud, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Ruud Govers, both not words that are easily pronounced in English, but there we are. I work for Orange Trail, and I'll tell you what Orange Trail does in just a little bit.
Okay, cool, thank you so much. Before we start, some housekeeping rules for today. If you have a question, and we love to hear from you, you can use the Q&A that we have available for you. So all of your questions that you might have, just put them in the Q&A and we'll try to give you all the answers. The answers will be given by our subject matter experts. That will be Quinn and Jaap, who are both from Orange Trail, and will be able to answer all of your questions. And if there's a question we think should be in the broadcast, then we will say it.
Feature it.
Yeah, feature it. Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a look at where we are right now and what Teams can do for you. If we look at the situation right now, the workplace is changing, right? So you're all working from home or hybrid, not going to the office that much. So difficult times for all of you. And Teams is a good tool to help you out on this, to make sure you're still able to work with your colleagues and your coworkers. If you look, is that 70% of you guys and girls just want to work in a hybrid mode also in the near future. So looking at the future, we will see more hybrid working than we are seeing right now. Basically, if you look at how you're working now at home, you find that good way of working. You also want to go to the office sometimes, and combining that is what we call the hybrid world. And we're already with 5 generations in the workforce right now, so everybody has a different demand on how the workplace would be. So my workplace is with a desktop or a laptop device, where I can see that younger people are using more mobile devices like their phone or tablets. And yeah, everybody has their own way of working. So it's basically how you work that's going to be more essential, and the workplace should be the environment that suits you and that you can help you do more around that. So looking at that, we see that the modern workplace will be the new reality. And the modern workplace can be all kinds of things. It can be, as you can see right here, from a busy office where we have all of these computer nerds working, but also people just relaxing from home, doing their work on a mobile device. So there are all changes going on, and we like to facilitate that with technology that we can bring to you. So if you can imagine how a workplace can be and what you would like to do, you want to integrate your business processes that you have right now or applications that you build by yourself into one environment. Automate routine tasks. Let's say, for example, you want to do declarations or book holidays. Wouldn't it be nice that when an employee just books a holiday, you get a notification, well, he wants to have a holiday, and you can approve it in just one single click. Or bring all of these applications together what you're working right now. We're going to talk about applications that are also existing outside of Teams, can be integrated within Microsoft Teams. So bringing this together would be cool to have them in one place. And also to communicate and collaborate together from one single hub. That single hub is Microsoft Teams. And Microsoft Teams is there to help you out doing all of these things that you want to do in one single environment. So communicating with your coworkers, communicating with your partners or with your customers, just with one click, and also working together on documents, putting documents in place, sharing content can all be done within Microsoft Teams. As we look for Teams as a platform and what it is, we see that we have 4 pillars, and I would like to explain to you in short what these 4 pillars are. So let me first start with Powerapps. Powerapps are easily built and easy creatable applications or forms that you would like to use that doesn't combine, that you don't need to have that much code information. So if you are just able to do some stuff in Excel, that kind of level of knowledge is needed if you want to build like a Power App for yourself. Easy to deploy and manage. So if you build like a Power application, think, well, this is suitable also for other people in my organization, then it's really easy that you can share that. And you can say, well, let's use this for all of the people in the organization. And even IT admins will be able then to just deploy that and manage these applications across the organization. You also can make use of external resources. Let's say you have a dynamic system on the other side, an ERP system, or even SAP or other types of environments that you want to connect to. you can do that. So all of these data sources are available for you. And last but not least, it's all built on the Microsoft 365 security. So everything you're going to see here today is within the Microsoft environment. Some tools will go outside of the environment, but you can check it out to see if it's reliable within the Microsoft 365 environment. Another cool feature is Power Automate. Automating processes that you might do day-to-day work can be pre-configured if you would like to do that. It's just with some clicking work you can basically build an automation process. If you want to know more about this automation process, I would recommend you to look for the links at the end of this presentation, where we have a session around Power Automate in this webinar series, so you can watch that again and again if you want to know more about Power Automate. Power Virtual Agents. With Power Virtual Agents, it's easy for you to create bots, to create chatbots, and these chatbots can be self-learning if you would like to do that. Take some code to do that, but if you don't want to do that and you want to give them the answers beforehand, so you're able to say, well, this is a common question and this is the answer to that, you can create that. And even you are able, if the answer is not suitable, that there's a link to another resource, let's say a help desk or whatsoever, that can be called right away. Last but not least, we're going to talk within this Teams as a Platform series, third-party applications. And we're going to show you some cool third-party applications just in a moment. But these are applications not built by Microsoft, but built by other vendors that will make you able to work with these applications within Microsoft Teams. One of these examples, what you see right here, is a coffee break app from a partner of ours, just as an example that you can see what you can do. And this is really easy because this application is very nice, because if you want to connect employees who do not see each other right now, you can have virtual coffee breaks, and you can say, well, are you into diving? And do you think that's a common ground that we have? And it does the mixing and matching on that. So you have something to talk about instead of all of these work things.
You can dive into it.
You can dive into it, exactly.
That's
Thanks for that, Ruud. Again, productivity isn't just about the tool. It's how the way you work with it, so it's your approach. Like 20% is only about the tool, and the tool is the technology that you use. But in the end, it's how you work with it. It's the approach that you have and the way you want to work with it. So keep that in mind. Everything you see here today, and also in the future, the tool is not the one directing you. You are directing the tool, and you are the person that has the approach on how to use this tool. And before I give it to Ruud, I want to say something about Viva Connections in Teams. We just released this, and this is available worldwide now. So it's very cool for you if you want to put an intranet environment into your Teams environment. So I like this very much because it's really handy when I start up Teams in my day-to-day work. The first page I see is the page on what my company news is, what the menu could be for the office. Especially, I like that, right? So having the menu around
That's
lunch.
really all that matters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, I'm going for lunch to the office. That's the only reason I go. So I can see that if it's worthwhile for me to step into the car and drive to the office for lunch. If not, then
fair enough.
Yeah. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Ruud, who's going to talk more to you about third-party applications. So Ruud,
yes,
over to you.
The magic clicking thing.
The magic clicking thing.
Thank you. Right, so hello everyone. Thanks for joining. As I said quickly in the intro, I was going to tell you a little bit about what Orange Trail does, who we are. Here you see essentially the 4 quadrants, right? The pillars that we'd like to focus on, usually with the bigger companies. You see some brands on the right that we are very fortunate to be working with on these 4 quadrants, namely leadership engagement, which essentially means that leaders do not always feel engaged with and connected to people in the workforce, but also conversely, people in the workforce don't always have a clear idea of who is up there in the ivory tower. Especially as there is less and less face-to-face contact. Of course, people are not working in the office, so the serendipitous run-ins are not as frequent anymore. So this is a very important thing that we see a lot these days. A lot of companies struggle with this visibility, because with visibility comes the opportunity to emphasize what's the strategy, where are we going as a company. You are part of something bigger. We help companies with that. On the right, we see innovated collaboration. So what a lot of people have been calling the new state of work, we basically have been calling work, because we've been doing this for a while, but we've been fortunate enough to help a lot of these companies innovate, or essentially translate into new ways of working. Most of those have, of course, been in the online realm in the last year. So we help Accelerated learning is something that's more on the, let's say, the outer loop side of things. So if you think of networks like Yammer, enterprise social networks, here you can really work with communities of practice. If you do that effectively, then a lot of people learn, mostly accidentally, but they learn nonetheless. Yeah. We help companies set that up and run that. And then what we do are efforts in adoption of new applications, third party or otherwise, or new ways of working. Everything we do there is scalable. So we try to make use of the networks that are available to us within the company. And as I'm sure you can imagine, working with these brands, we have a bit of baggage there that we like to use to our advantage. So that's, in short, ironically on a purple slide, a bit about Orange Trail. So what we are going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about interactivity, which seems to be the holy grail these days. Yeah. How do I make my session more interactive? How do I go from predominantly one-way traffic to two-way traffic? You can do that with a couple of tools, but before we dive into the tools, I'd like to talk to you about maybe ways of working. So you don't always need a tool to make this work. Just by tweaking the way you run your sessions, you can already get a huge benefit out of that. And these tools can merely support you in that. So I'll talk you through what I mean by that. We'll also talk about Slido as a bit more of an integrated way of making these third-party apps work for you. We'll navigate some of the pitfalls, so things we see people do when they first jump in or dive in your case, a new tool. And then, of course, we'll talk about Mural in a bit more detail, which is, I would say, a whiteboarding solution on steroids. It's a very powerful tool to help with facilitation of sessions, co-creation, and whatnot. So I have some demos lined up and some screenshots and all of the good stuff. So we'll get right to that, I would say.
Let's dive into it.
Okay, let's stop it with that joke. Let's come up with a new one now before it gets old. Okay, so interactivity, what is it? What we see is that over the past year, companies have been able, or rather people within companies, so people, have been able to translate most of the things they do on a daily basis to the online realm. So what used to be a face-to-face meeting is now a call, things of that nature. One thing that is lagging, one thing that has been notoriously hard to translate, seems to be or appears to be the online brainstorms, online workshops. So basically the events that need a certain kind of energy, free flow of ideas, and have a lot of creativity in them, and also as a result of them. We have the feeling that some of the tools that we're going to show you today, but also, again, the methods that we're going to show you today, might help actually capture that energy in a way that doing these traditional offline events, or the things that you would do face-to-face in a meeting room, that you're now doing that online, that it doesn't feel like a hindrance or a limitation anymore, but you're starting maybe to see the potential benefits of that, where you might, even in the future, decide to do that stuff online, even if the offices open up again.
So it's a different play, right? So if you do this physically, it's a different interaction that you might have. And what a lot of people try to do is copy one-on-one the fact that what you were doing at the office into an online thing, but it's a different thing. Keeping people interested, attractive. You're talking about energy here. I think, that's absolutely the key thing. So good to know.
Yeah. Not sure if I can keep people attractive, but I get what you mean.
Let's try that. Let's try that.
Okay, here we go. So we essentially, like all good stories, we start at the beginning. And even before we dive into the tooling side of things, a thing that I like to do is essentially align. No more, no less. There's people in the call. They have all come there with certain expectations. I have some slides like I have right now. I have a story to tell. But ideally, what I tell you is in line with what you would like to learn. You can guess that, but that can only get you so far. So there's multiple ways, again, even before bringing in the cavalry in the form of third-party apps. There's a lot of things you can already do. Ask the question in the chat section of your Teams call, or in this case, a live event, for instance. Or you can quickly poll in the chat. That's an application, but not a third-party one. You can do that using forms. Or similarly, what I like to do is create a form beforehand, It's a couple clicks, add the questions, you're donesies. You share that form at the beginning of the session where you ask, what are you hoping to learn today? Which is essentially open for them to answer, free form. But I also like to use that opportunity to gauge the, let's say, the level of digital literacy or digital savviness of the people that I'm working with in that session. And I do that by simply asking them, how comfortable are you with the subject matter today? For instance, in this case, how comfortable are you with hosting an interactive session? And then I might give them 3 options: beginner, intermediate, advanced, which in and of itself doesn't mean anything. So kind of scope that a little bit, make it easy for them to gauge their own level by saying, for instance, I'm a beginner, which means I have not hosted a session before. I'm an intermediate, I have some experience, and I'm here to learn very specific tricks of the trade. Or advanced might be people come to me for advice on virtual trainings. So now you're giving people a more scoped out possibility. And what this does is, if you have 2 screens, for instance, you have the content on the main screen, and here on your other screen, you see the reactions come in, then you get a very nice pie chart that essentially at a glance can tell you, okay, I have a lot of experts in the call, or I have a lot of beginners in the call, and then you can adjust the content based on what you see. But also, of course, you get a lot of input, free form input of specific things that people might want to learn about. Maybe like fancy tips and tricks specifically about Mural, and the more granular they are, the easier it is for you to just pick that up at the appropriate time. So you just leave it on the other screen, and once in a while you have a look and see, okay, are we tackling these subjects? Am I aligning the session with what people are expecting? So that's a very nice way to do that. And that's just by using a form. So again, no third-party application.
And you're also talking about the interaction with the audience. Does it help camera on, camera off? Is that something that you like to recommend, yes or no? What's your feeling about that?
It's tricky, because I would recommend cameras on, because you can kind of gauge, where people are at. But if you have a big session, that's not going to give you a lot of information. If you want to do it for the wrong reasons, so sometimes we hear people say, I want people to turn on the camera so I can see if they're paying attention. But if people want to check their email, they're going to check their email. They might do it inconspicuously, but just turning on the camera is not going to stop people from disengaging. So if you make it very interesting for them, and you make it very tailored, because of course, the best way to get that engagement is to have content in your session that 100% aligns with what people would like to learn, then you're going to engage them. So then you don't have to use the camera on, camera off. But in general, it's nice to see some faces. So if people look confused, you might want to double down on that. If people look very happy, you can safely assume, hey, this is actually in line with what people would like to hear. From
research showed that the Netherlands, around 70% of the people put on their cameras. Also in the Scandinavian countries, they're doing that. But in the other countries in Europe, it's much less. So funny to see that's like a difference in that. I don't know why it is, but basically, we maybe also with bandwidth could be also an option.
Definitely
on that. What I see a lot, especially at Microsoft, what we are seeing is that people turn on the camera at the moment that they are talking. So they switch it off, and when they want to say something, they turn on the camera. I don't know what the reason behind that, but then they think they must be inclusive in that part. Yeah, well, you might manage those expectations as a facilitator. If you give people the option, you might find that actually more people turn on the camera than if you ask them specifically to do that. Yeah, absolutely. For me, that gets a bit itchy if they say you have to turn on the camera. Right? Yeah. Agree. So again, do it for the right reasons. I like to have someone staring back at me. Now, of course, all I see is cameras and some screens, but luckily Jeroen is here to smile at me. So that's nice. That will work for now. Anyway, so you can share that form. You can also share a Kahoot or a Mentimeter. Now, if that is all Chinese for you, we'll just zoom in on that in the next slides, because I have some information on what those tools might do for you. And of course, you can do it in a more basic way, which is just simply using the meeting chat, like I said before, and use the likes, so the thumbs up, raise hands functionality. If maybe you want to vote for something, which is a cool little life hack there. Or all of these fancy reactions that keep coming. All these happy things. The happy things. Applause and what's the hearts. And the heart and the laughing and So that's all very nice. And again, no third-party app needed.
except for the Kahoot and the Mentimeter case, which we will get into momentarily. So at the beginning of the session, that, for me personally, is essentially a moment of buy-in. That's where I grab people's attention and I align my goals with their goals, or I don't. But in any case, it will set the tone for the rest of the session, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah.
So when we talk about interactivity, a lot of people go, oh yeah, I'd like to add these little quizzes with which superhero would you like to be, and all of these icebreaker type questions. And that's amazing, because these tools are great to do that. But just because you're using a very colorful tool, like in the case of Kahoot, as you can see, doesn't mean that the questions need to be informal, right? It's not all they do, icebreakers. You can use these tools to gauge sentiment. So, you know, what is the main thing that you would like to take out of this session in one word? Yeah. And then you can see in real time, you see that word cloud form. Again, that's something that you can directly feed into the session. You can add a competitive element, because some people, Jeroen just told me that he's into pop quizzes, and I imagine Jeroen is one of these people then, who go really well on this competitive element. That's easily added, and will guarantee that the people who might otherwise not be paying attention then do, because there's something to win or not. You can assess the knowledge level beforehand. So, okay, we're going to talk about subject X, maybe virtual training. We're going to talk about virtual training. What is your knowledge level? And then you can reassess at the end and actually see if people learned something during your session, which of course is great feedback for you to have. And now, even if you already are familiar with these tools, what might be new for you to hear is that some of these tools, and in fact, I think both of these are also available as integrations in Teams. You can add them as an app or a tab in Teams.
Yeah, cool.
So you might want to check that out.
Yeah, I really love Kahoot. I think it's really, really cool. I also love the music within Kahoot, but that's maybe just my thing.
It's nothing is
no.
sparking. I don't know.
No, it's really cool. Kahoot is just really easy to use, and they can use it on their mobile device or within Teams, because there's also an app within Teams. So that's quite cool to take a look at.
Definitely, and even if you're not using it as an app in Teams, because we'll have a look at it like a more integrated experience with the example of Slido in just a second. How you share these is essentially you share a link, and the people open that in their browser, or you pull up a QR code. Your LinkedIn was in a QR code in the first screen. So there you might pick up your phone, scan that QR code, and then you're filling in the answers on the phone while you see the content, or the questions rather, on the screen. If that is a risk for you, in the sense that now people are dividing their attention over two screens, and maybe you want to have questions specifically around content that is on the screen, so maybe some content here and then a question in the chat, then you might want to integrate this experience a bit more, which you can do, for instance, with Slido. So this app, Slido, and again, a couple of other apps that I encourage you to explore in that app section in Teams. A couple of these apps you can add to your calendar invite. And I'll show you in just a second what that then looks like for both you as the organizer and the attendees. But you can do this by going to the calendar, going to your invite, and then much like you would add a tab to a channel, you can add a tab to an actual meeting. So this adds the option of using that app during the meeting. Yeah,
it's really cool feature, and we call it meeting extensibility apps. So it extends your meeting, right? So this is one of the examples. One little caveat I would like to share is when you first set up a calendar, and it's not available to do on the plus. First you have to save it, then go back into the calendar item, and then you can edit. It's a little flaw, as I might say. So we're fixing this. But if you see, hey, I don't see it and I have it installed, this can be the reason. So keep that in mind. And we are building partners are building a lot of these meeting extensibilities right now. So you will see much more of them coming your way. So yeah, watch out for that. But I really love the Slido version of the meeting extensibility. So I hope to learn more also. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more how to add this and how to work with it.
I may or may not have had that exact issue with the missing plus sign in creation of this slide.
Yeah.
But it's there, so it worked in the end. Okay, so you've added Slido to your meeting. How do you now create quizzes? Well, you can do this either before the meeting, or you can do this during the meeting, which is a very nice way to, and then I get ahead of myself a little bit, but to engage with the audience on the fly, especially if you have two moderators or two organizers in the call. So let's say you and I are hosting an event. It doesn't take a lot of imagination, because that's exactly what we're doing right now. So this event, then Jeroen could maybe ask or formulate questions on the go that either rank ideas or the word cloud that I mentioned before, and I have a screenshot of that in the next slide. Or you can simply, gauge the sentiment. You can see if everyone is still on board, so to speak. But you can also have everything in place before the meeting even starts. So again, you go to your invite and there to the Slido tab that you've now added. And you can see what you see here on the screenshot, in the screenshot on the left, which is all of the options you have of things to create in Slido. And then what you also see, and that's not on this screenshot because that would have been a bit crowded, you can also see what that looks like for the participants. Yeah. So sometimes something I find very annoying is if I'm creating something and I have no idea what people are going to see. So you don't have that issue here. Yeah. Once in the meeting, you can also add questions, add polls, simply turn on Slido essentially, because you've added that to your meeting. So it's there, it's the S, which is the purple outline on the right. And there you essentially have the same options that you see in the left screenshot. But you can do this during the meeting. And it looks like this, or at least this is an example of what that might look like. But then, of course, with your own questions superimposed. On the left, you see what the attendees see, and you might recognize this as the chat section of your Teams call, which is exactly what it is. So in the chat, if you open Slido, that's what you see. And they get to see both, the participants get to see both the questions and also the results. What you can also add is like a bit of a ranking in between. Yeah. So once again, that competitive element, you can throw that in there, which is also nice if you want to have people guess certain things, and then you can see, oh, that's funny, 78% got this correct. Yeah, something along those lines. On the right, you see that you have a bit of a collection of questions that you can put on play and stop, respectively, at any given time. So you can throw in a question and then you can pull it back out. So that's what that looks like for the organizer. And again, this can all be done during the meeting, which is really, really nice.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
And this brings us to what I like to call shiny object syndrome, or the magpie syndrome. So sometimes when people go all in with a new tool, and you're going to see Mural in just a second, and that's one of those tools where that kind of tends to happen regularly. They see, this is the answer to all of my prayers. This is solving problems I didn't know I had. Let's overhaul everything and now do everything in this new tool. Yeah. And people start recreating what they've been traditionally doing in a PowerPoint or in an Excel or whatever, and everything is thrown into this new tool. Then it's session day, right? It's D-Day, even though session doesn't start with a D, but it's D-Day. And you share the Mural, and then people go, I have no idea how to navigate this. Yeah. So now you can imagine where the energy is going.
They're going also from what does this button do, or what does that button do? So
exactly. So all of that precious energy that you would have liked, to be focused on the task at hand is now going to figuring out the tool.
Yeah. So the tool becomes like the most important thing in that case, and instead of the approach that you want to have on that.
Exactly. Yeah. So even if you have a new fancy tool, you might want to take a step back and kind of reflect on, who's my audience going to be? And if you, for instance, feel that the digital literacy, or at least the comfort, the level of comfort with these digital solutions and new tools, the flexibility, some say, if that's just not there with the target audience that you're going to host a session with, but you do know that they feel very comfortable, for instance, with PowerPoint or something that is not traditionally used for these kinds of interactions. Yeah. Maybe you should go ahead and, as you can see in the screenshot here, create a PowerPoint for people to co-create in, just for that session. Because, it should never be about the tool, which is essentially the mantra of this presentation. Yeah. And I'll also circle back on that later on. So just make sure that the audience and the tool, that they align. And of course, if you have a corresponding Teams call, and you share a mural in the Teams call, and I'll show you in a second how to do that effectively, then that's a bit more forgiving, because now at least you're there. So you're not sending people off to co-create in a thing they don't know, but you're there. But in any case, that's a dangerous thing to do. So word to the wise. And secondly, asking questions for the sake of asking questions. And maybe you recognize this.
Yeah, I start nibbling a bit because you see this all of the time. And people just start to ask a question and then they don't come back to the question, and you think, okay, what was the question for? So,
but what's for lunch?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we see sometimes, and another variation of that is people asking a question for which they do not have the mandate.
Oh yeah.
So like maybe someone behind the reception asking something about the business strategy, which is an interesting question to ask. But if people then use their precious time to give valuable input and nothing happens with the input, then what do you think, engagement levels are going to be next time you ask a question?
Yeah.
And of course, this might be an ongoing thing for you. Maybe you have a series of these types of events. So you want people to know, okay, if I give an answer, then that will either be circled back to later on in the presentation, or it might come back in presentation or session somewhere down the road. Either way, questions are great instruments, but make sure that you actually use the output and or that the questions are relevant for the session. So if you have an icebreaker, if you're asking people which superhero they would like to be, that's not immediately applicable in the business, but it does serve a purpose, which is kind of make people comfortable with the fact, okay, we're in this session now. So I use that as a palate cleanser, essentially. So let's say you're now in this session, you likely had a meeting just before this. Maybe you're still thinking about the follow-up of that. In that case, an icebreaker can go, no, we're in this call now. Park the other thoughts. We're in this call. You can kind of reset people's frame of mind. So then the answers don't necessarily matter, but it does have a purpose, which is realign or align rather. So just keep that in mind. Some additional tips and tricks for engagement and interactivity. Leave space for questions in between segments and inform participants. Inform them of what? Well, inform them of how you would like to receive these questions. Of course, we're quite limited in the two-way traffic because it's a live event. You manage the expectations at the beginning of the session, saying, I would like you to use the chat, use the Q&A. So that essentially makes it easy for people to comply with that. If they don't, especially in a regular Teams call, people might feel a bit hesitant to speak up because they might interrupt you or have the feeling that they're interrupting you. They might not know that you're actually keeping an eye on the chat during the session. So if you say, hey, I am keeping an eye on the chat, so feed the questions there, and then not only are you activating other participants to also, you give them the possibility to answer, much like Quinn and Jaap are now busy, probably typing away happily while I'm telling you this. So that's an option, but there's also, of course, raise hand. So if you say, raise your hand if you don't want to interrupt me, but you do have a question, and I will give you the mic. If you manage these expectations, then you're setting the you're setting the scene for interactivity.
It's like a safe haven for people, so they know it's okay to ask a question. Always try also to make use of the fact that everybody is free to answer a question, that there's no stupid questions. And so if you have any questions, it's good to do that and make sure that you can do that in the right manner and that it's safe for everybody to ask these questions.
Yeah, because by the time someone says this is probably a stupid question, but you can these people probably will have been thinking about should I not ask this question for at least 5 minutes. So it's indeed a safe haven. You create a safe space. And even safer, so that's the second bullet here, is asking for examples instead of answers, because of course answers can be right or wrong. You don't want to be giving wrong answers. If the question is very intimidating, that the effect is even more so. But examples are personal. So if you explain a concept and you ask people how they have applied those concepts in their daily work, that's their daily work. That's not for you to decide whether that's right or wrong. So that might be a bit of a lower threshold. We talked about introverts earlier. That's especially a way to really tap into the power of people who might not feel comfortable in a group setting, but you'd be surprised at the quality of ideas that they have,
Absolutely.
just below the surface.
Yeah.
If you can make it as safe as possible, those answers will come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Unlock creativity also in that way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
When it comes to the setup that you have, I say 2 screens here. I made the joke in an earlier session that I have about 10 screens
Yeah, there are a lot
in front of me, but all you need is 2 screens because you can combine some things, namely the content on one screen, the PowerPoint or the Mural or whatever you're using. And then on the left, you can either have the chat. If people have their camera turned on, you can see people, you can see the reactions in real time. And of course, if you started with a form, you can see the input coming in.
Yeah, that's really easy. That's good to see. And we're working on some solutions around this. Not everything is the right solution for that. But if you're doing like a PowerPoint presentation, we now have something called PowerPoint Live, where you can see it on the screen. You can put yourself in front of that presentation or sharing your screen, and also have the capability to see the participants in the session. So you can also see the questions. So we try to figure it out what works best. We also do something with dynamic views. So we try to mix and match that a bit. But again, in some cases, it's best to have 2 screens because you need to do stuff on another screen because you want to show it in the full space that it is. So just giving it,
it's very, very powerful, and especially if you have a tool like Mural where you might want to also have a bit of face-to-face interaction to see whether the people are getting the tool, especially in the beginning, in the early days, so to speak. Then 2 screens, definitely a recommendation. The using mute all responsibly is, of course, we've all been there. Someone in the call is noisy. Likely they don't know it themselves. Maybe they have a noise cancelling headphone on, which is what I tend to have. But then there's a lot of noise around them that's being picked up by the mic. They don't know, so they're not to blame. And then you mute them. If you do this repeatedly, because you can mute everyone in the call. In fact, I think everyone can do that with certain rights. They cannot unmute everyone from a distance. And I'm sure you can imagine
a good thing.
It's probably a good thing. Don't put that in the backlog.
Exactly, it won't happen.
So if you mute people, my stomach is rumbling a bit. I hope the mic doesn't pick that up. James, I'm sorry. What was I saying? The mute all, yes. If you repeatedly mute everyone in the session, that might come off as some form of light censorship. So if you're just spending a lot of time saying, please ask questions, and whenever someone wants to speak up, they go, you're on mute. So be sure to explain to people why you're muting them, that it's for technical reasons and that people should feel free to unmute, but then to also mute if they're not speaking. That's, I think, etiquette. And some people do that naturally. Some people need, let's call it light encouragement. So you can give that encouragement. Ask for feedback because, I always like to pick up something new during these sessions, whether it's process-wise or content-wise. Which is, I gave myself a nice little bridge to the next slide, but that's for about 10 seconds from now. So ask for the feedback. Forms is a great way to do that. And last but not least, maybe you have not seen this before. It's quite new, not super new,
month,
quite new.
2 months.
Yeah. Spotlight. So what's Spotlight? If you have a lot of video feeds, then it's not always clear who the speaker is. We've all been there. Like who's talking. Spotlight allows you to essentially, Spotlight, there you go, great naming. Spotlight is a single video feed, so that can either be you, full screen video, or maybe someone who's answering a question, or a guest speaker, or someone who just co-created in a breakout room, came back to the main call, and on behalf of the group, as we tended to do back in high school, on behalf of the group, gets to share the results. You can spotlight that person, and then unspotlight them when they've given their answer. That's a very nice way to keep that engagement level high. Put a face to a name, essentially.
Yeah, and you can do it by yourself. So Spotlight has like 2 features for everybody or just for yourself. So when you use Spotlight, it will get you the question, do you want to show this to everybody or do you want to use it by yourself? So it's something to keep in mind.
And if someone else spotlights you, you also get notified.
Yeah.
So that's nice. Maybe if there's like a secret crush, I don't know.
No. You don't know.
Okay. So some tips and tricks. One thing that I just mentioned that I like to do is pick up something new because I'm sharing, there's limited time, I'm sharing a limited number of tools and applications, but I'm sure that you are currently using tools or applications that are making a world of difference for you that maybe I don't know, or better yet, people in the call don't know about. So question to you, and you can do that in the background if you have a spare couple of brain cells to go towards that while I continue with the presentation. Can you name a functionality or an integration in Teams that makes your life as a facilitator easier, or that would make your life as a facilitator easier? So in the case of an application or a feature that doesn't exist yet.
Exactly. Just please let us know. You can use the Q&A for that. So just go to the Q&A and hope you can answer this question for us. And we'll have a look later in this session on that.
Then if you have some free stuff for the backlog.
Yeah, exactly.
You're welcome.
So, yeah.
So that's nice. So do let us know. And I have to say that basically every session I pick up something that I haven't used or considered or heard about before. So that's pretty cool. And that brings us to Mural, essentially the second chunk of this session today. What is it? Like I said in the beginning, I think I said it's a whiteboarding solution on steroids. It's a whiteboard, but it's much more because it's also a very powerful combination with a Teams call or breakout room. It has a lot of features in it that will help you as a facilitator of a session. We'll look at those in more detail. And I also have some screen grabs, some screen recordings for you that will show you how to access all of that goodness. So first of all, three of the main, let's say the key areas where I think Mural really shines. Faster ideation. So what's ideation? Let's say you work in an agile environment, and as part of your process, every 3 weeks you have a review of your sprint. It's always the same. You know, a lot of these teams do this with Post-its on the wall, and they don't have a digital alternative. So what you could do with Mural is pull up a template, a retrospective template. You see an example of that here on the bottom right, by the way. A retrospective template, people can move the Post-its around. So that's essentially Mural facilitating what you've been doing anyway. But you can also challenge that a little bit, because if you don't click here, but you click here, that's how easy it is. You can pull up an entirely different setup, and this different setup can kind of shed a different light on the process that you've been running in a fixed way for maybe years. So now you're challenging how people are, you know, you're not allowing people to go into autopilot mode. So maybe you'll get some different answers for the same questions, or maybe you're asking different questions, but the process is the same. So it's faster ideation, but also more creative ideation. So if you quickly want to gather ideas, maybe you start with a design thinking canvas and make people, surprise people with the approach that you take. So that might change what you get in terms of input. So Mural really does that well. You can, of course, brainstorm collaboratively. So it's no more waiting for the person with the Post-its to stick them on the wall and add a sense of hierarchy, even if this person doesn't mean to do that, because everyone gets to add their information in real time. Everyone is hierarchically the same. And if you move on in terms of the session has now gone to a different section of the session, then you can still come back, add some more ideas, shuffle some ideas around. So it's not linear in that fashion. So that's very nice. And that also helps you in the facilitation of sessions, because if you have a call, you combine it with a Mural, your Teams call can be a call with the entire group, or maybe you set up some breakout rooms and then you have people co-creating groups on a Mural. So this is all very powerful stuff that I'll show you a bit more about a couple slides down the road. But first, let's have a look at the ingredients that you have. So essentially, like in the left bar of your Teams client, you have everything from chats to files to calendar, etc., etc. Here in Mural, you also have that left-hand bar, and there you have essentially the elements that you can build your Mural from. So you can start from templates that are pre-filled with, or pre-structured, I should say, which doesn't mean that it's now set in stone. You can still move those elements around, but you can also start from scratch. And in any case, you can use all of these ingredients on the left to build your own environment. So you start with a white space, you either overlay it with a template that does 90% of the work for you, or you build from scratch. You have your titles, your text, or your Post-its. Simply double clicking on the Mural, by the way, adds a Post-it, so that's nice. Shapes and connectors. So if you don't have a lot of things in your Mural yet, you might not feel the need to connect things, but as you grow, as the content grows, you might want to start connecting things. I like to use shapes to basically create a table, like a a set of squares where I would like people to brainstorm in. So I can do that using shapes. Icons, of course, to give a bit of more visual information to certain sections. You can also see how this is being used in the screenshot on the right. The grids and the frameworks for me are really the bread and butter of Mural, because they're essentially little nuggets that you can use to facilitate specific things. So the next slide has that in a bit more detail, but essentially what it is that if you want to create a persona, then you click on the frameworks, you type in persona, and then you get frameworks. So essentially squares that are structured in such a way that you can use them very easily to create that persona. Same goes for retros, calendars. You know, if you want to create a content calendar in a Mural, you simply type calendar, and then you select the month, and then you have a big calendar that you can kind of zoom out, and then you can put post-its on the different days for which piece of content is going to go out. So that's nice. Images, there's an engine behind Mural, so you don't have to add images. You can simply search for them. I like to use that for logos, so client logos. So whenever a client comes into a Mural that I created, it feels a little bit like home. Because, you know, if I work for Heineken, then there's Heineken in the front, there's like a little beer mug next to it, and they go, okay, there's some time, some effort that went into this. So that's nice. Your element library is essentially if you have an element that works for you, that you spend a lot of time crafting, then you can store that. It's essentially like your favorites in your browser. So over time that might grow and be filled with elements that you like to use and reuse and reuse. It's very nice. And you can also freely draw it. So if you have used the Microsoft whiteboarding application, you might recognize that. You can freely draw and also freely connect certain elements within your Mural. So I want to speed up a little bit. Here you can see that a Mural has building blocks, so you can navigate these sections. And here I'll zoom into the frameworks. So indeed, if you select Agile, you can see the ingredients you might need to run a retrospective. If you want to do something around design thinking or personas, you can simply click the tab or essentially type in the type of process that you would like to work on. So this is a very easy way to do that. And we will share the slides, so we encourage you also to have a look at this. Here you see something pretty cool, which is the outline. Essentially, this means that the different elements in the Mural you can add to sort of like an index, a clickable index. So this puts things in order, and when you click on the elements, Mural zooms in to that element. The evolution of that is essentially the presentation mode. If you've used Prezi before, then you might recognize the style of zooming in and zooming out when presenting. The presentation mode allows you to do just that. So it's a quick movie here. On the right, you see the outline. If you open that, then you get the chapters. So you can take a section of the Mural and add it to the outline by right-clicking. And if you click that, then Mural does all of the zooming for you. Presentation mode, like I said, is the evolution of that. So now you are walking through the Mural free of distraction, right? So that's nice. And then when you're done with that, you can simply click the X, and now you're back to the Mural. So the powerful thing there is that you can use this to, as a facilitator, combine information with interaction. So what you can do, for instance, you can add images, so screenshots of slides, or you can even copy paste PowerPoint slides in directly. So now you have this information on a Mural, and then maybe next to that an assignment about that Mural. Because all of these elements you can add to the outline. If you start your session out by walking people through the outline, now everyone has a clear idea of what they need to do. If it's just information, you might want to use this Mural to share this information with your stakeholders in a way that is just, you know, fresh and just not a PowerPoint for a change. So that's also a cool way to do that. Apart from that, there's some other pretty powerful features that you can use as a facilitator. You see them listed here. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list, but there's some cool things to get you started. Locking and unlocking. So if you spend a lot of time and effort into designing your Mural, you don't want people to start moving around the structure. You just want them to add the content. So you can lock these elements so other people can't move them around. You can ask to be followed, or you can summon, which is the I wasn't asking version of asking to be followed. So if you have a very big Mural and you're on the top left and everyone is at the bottom right, which you can see because you know the little cursors get like the initials, then you can essentially summon them so that these people see what you see. Then, for instance, you can start presenting. Right? You can structure your session by adding a timer. So that allows you to essentially chop up your session into sections, maybe 5 minutes of brainstorm, 10 minutes of coffee or whatever, other important things. So that helps you, the timer functionality. And then you can also vote to rank ideas. So remember, these are all things, options that are in Mural. So you don't need another tool for this. It's all in Mural. If ideas have come in, now you can start voting. A voting session, you give people a fixed number of votes. That's up to you. You can name the voting session. Now people can click anonymously. And in the end, you get to see how things are ranked. So maybe you want to vote for the best idea to now pick up. Maybe you want to vote for the next steps. Maybe you want to vote for the coolest name for your new coffee corner.
Well,
maybe you want to vote for a lunch menu.
Exactly.
You know, endless possibilities.
Yeah.
But don't forget about the lunch menu.
No, lunch, very important.
Okay. Now that we have that.
Yeah, that's settled now.
Cool. You can structure the mural in chapters. We just talked about that, so we don't have to focus on that now. And the elements we also talked about, so adding them to the content library. And what I want to do now is quickly show you. Quickly is the only way because we only have 10 minutes,
10 minutes left. Yeah.
So quickly show you how to combine this with Teams. So this slide essentially shows you how to combine it on a more session level. The next slide will show you a bit more of an integrated way, I would say. Not really, it's more like an old school integration. You'll see, I get ahead of myself. So what you do is you start a meeting in Teams, call in Teams with the people that you want to co-create with. You share the link in the mural. You talk everyone through the structure, right? With the presentation mode, you either share the screen or you wait for everyone to enter the mural and then ask to be followed. Now you can co-create as one group, or you can create breakout rooms in Teams. So you have, for instance, multiple divisions. Everyone gets their own breakout room. Maybe there's a communication breakout room and a marketing breakout room. For Heineken, we had 2 teams that work closely together on almost everything, but not on strategy. So we had all of the strategy that was planned in one mural in the end, but 2 breakout rooms to create that separately from each other. So that's quite nice. And then you can guide the session for synchronous collaboration or provide instructions for asynchronous collaboration. That's just a very expensive way of saying you can stay in the call and all co-create together, or you can give the information in such a way that people have the instructions to then go off and work in the mural in their own time. So if you're in a dispersed team, lots of time zones, maybe you have people coming back from a holiday, maybe there's people, you have an assignment lined up and you're using Mural for that. So how do you do that? You can do that as follows. So you can either add a mural to a Teams tab and then provide instructions in a thread, which you can see on the right, or you can directly link to that mural in the thread. So let's say you have a team setup, and in that team setup, you have various channels. Maybe one of those channels is a brainstorm channel. And then in that brainstorm channel, you can have an assignment or a thread of any nature, as you can see on the right. And there you have the assignment lined up, the steps. And one of the steps is, go to the mural. The mural is linked in. And if you have better eyes than I do, then you can see at the top that it's also pinned as a tab. Got it?
Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
You got it.
Looking
Then, at it. So you have a nice combination. You have everything in one place. So the place where you brainstorm now lives in the channel where you brainstorm. Right. So this is a very old school way of integrating Mural into Teams. But the asynchronous aspect of it, I think, and I talk to my colleagues about this quite a lot, we think that the asynchronous aspect of working together will be more and more emphasized as people are really finding the rhythm that works for them, finding ways to combine work with personal life. So not everything needs to be a meeting all the time, but how do you facilitate asynchronous work? Well, there's lots of things, lots of areas to optimize there. This is one of them, I think.
Very cool. Fun fact is that we just got somebody, you asked what would be more handy within Teams, and somebody says, I would love for Mural to be available as a Teams meeting tab, so we can have a similar experience as the Microsoft Whiteboard during the meeting, or like Slido, right? Like a meeting extension. So yeah, would be cool to have that. So hopefully.
Most definitely. You can. It is an app, because I wasn't going to get into this, but there's a difference between apps that you can add as a tab in a channel and apps that you can add to a meeting.
Yeah.
Here you see how that's a little bit different. And
Yeah.
I also see, so whoever is asking that question, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
I hope camera was on me. You're on the right track.
Yeah,
That's a great new feature,
yeah.
definitely. And I can actually, ask the people from Mural, because 2 slides down the road, we have a little bit of an offer. We're in quite close contact with them. So it's stuff like this that also helps us help them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It helps us help them, definitely. In summary, you might see this as a bit of an anticlimax, because essentially what we're saying is third-party apps are cool. You can integrate them into your workflow. You can integrate them in Teams. That's all nice and dandy, but don't forget why you are looking for that interaction. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Prevent asking questions for the sake of asking questions. Try to see if you can use any of these tools to get you to your goal, but also to make it clearer and to add to the meeting for the participants. So to add, not subtract, and definitely not distract. And above all, just experiment.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of a project team. So if you have maybe colleagues from the communications department and the 5 of you are all very curious to see how this works, plan in a call, set up some breakout rooms, add in a mural. What does this button do? Set up a Kahoot, try it with the QR code. So you also get a feel of what that experience might look like for your participants. Because you kind of can assume what will happen if they scan the QR code, but just live through it. That's also what we try to do. So, sit down in the seat of the participant and just walk through all of this. And that's essentially it from a content perspective. So in any case, I hope that at least gives you a foothold or a place to start exploring. From a more procedural standpoint, of course, if you're looking to innovate your collaboration, as I say here, if you're looking to work on any of those 4 pillars that we just talked about, right? So the leadership engagement, the improved and innovative collaboration, et cetera, then feel free to reach out. If specifically you would like to check out Mural, we can offer a Getting Started with Mural workshop. In which case, if you're not a customer with Mural yet, we also get to offer 10 free licenses for the first 6 months. And that's about as much sales as I can do at the moment. So more important for me now is that hopefully this has been helpful and informative for you. And with that, I very officially hand over.
Thank you so much.
There you go.
Take good care of
There
it. Yeah, to conclude, Ruud, thank you so much for showing this session. I think it's really interesting. Yeah, it's really cool to see what you can do with third-party applications to make more of a meeting and making sure that everybody is engaged in meetings. So that's really cool to see, and it really unlocks creativity. I love that. If you want to know more about this, I have some suggested next steps that you can do. You can reach out to a Microsoft partner, in this case Orange Trail, or reach out to Microsoft. Our sales persons and everybody within Microsoft who you have contact with are aware of this session, of this webinar series. So if you have any questions about it, you can reach out to them, and eventually they come to me. But okay, that's how it works. If you want to know more about Microsoft 365, there are some blogs that you can follow. There's a Microsoft 365 blog and a Teams blog that you can follow. If you're missing any feature when you're talking about that, you can go to aka.ms/user voice. You can then fill out a form and say, well, I want this feature. You can submit it, and then you can upvote, or people can upvote for you. And if there's a lot of voting, then I think we will work on it like we usually do.
It tends to work.
Yeah.
In my experience, it really works. So.
Yeah, exactly, like the hands up feature and disable cameras and stuff like that. That's all coming from that spot. If you want to watch this session over and over and over again, and you want to see Ruud as many times as you would like to do that, then tonight, I think around 8, 9, something like that, you can go to aka.ms tab sessions, TAP sessions number 2, and you will find this session and also other sessions. There's also tab sessions without a number, that are the sessions 1 to 5. So if you don't want to miss out on anything, just go there. And you have to register for a future session, just go to aka.ms tab webinars _en. Sorry, it should be underscore then, it's not there, but it's _en. And you can register for other versions and other sessions. So with that, I would like to thank you, Ruud, again.
Thank you for having
being
me
here and for enjoying ourselves. I had fun.
It's nice.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Thanks so much. And thank you as a viewer, and wish you well. Happy Easter, and speak to you soon.
Happy Easter. I don't know where to look, so I'm going to give a thumbs up everywhere. There we go. Just in case. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.